It's great to have everyone here. This is, like I said to the folks who just joined, our fourth webinar. We started this webinar series as In Situ as a way to tell our community about what we do and share knowledge both from us to the user base, but also from user to user. And so I'd like to start by talking a little bit about what In Situ does. So we are a startup that's been around for about 3 years, and our mission is to bring urban planning back into its real life context on the street to enable people to have better conversations about the future of our cities. We do that using technology called augmented reality, specifically location-based augmented reality, the latest developments of augmented reality where you can position buildings according to their real life locations out there. And so we do this to lower the friction to communicate and understand complex projects in situ. Now, like I said, our webinars are available on YouTube. So if you want to watch this topic or other topics like 3D best practices and how to model for augmented reality, or if you want to learn about climate projects and risk communication from our clients in Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, you can check out the videos on our YouTube page and subscribe. There's a QR code here if you want to scan that and visit our YouTube page. So, and I'm gonna mute these because they're gonna autoplay. So today we're here to talk about augmented reality for transportation planning. And I think if you've been following In Situ, you've seen a lot of building projects that we've done, visualizing buildings or towers, but AR is also really great for things that are not buildings. So one project we did in Buffalo, New York was a transportation project in spirit. It's, I think, pedestrian counts as transportation just as much. And this was connecting underserved neighborhood to a new park going across a highway. And so we visualized this in AR in 2022, and they just completed the actual bridge. So you can compare the AR to the real bridge here. This is one example of how the public right-of-way, which includes roads and rail and pedestrian, is just as amenable to this type of AR. One of the great things that AR can do for transportation planning, I think, is that it takes us out of this bird's eye view on the left and puts us back on the first-person perspective on the street. This is how most people understand cities. It's the best way to analyze cities, and so why don't we talk about cities and plans from this perspective more often? This was a model that didn't make it to the final cut for the Ohio project, but it was really fun to see how we could just walk right over the model and walk up to these bikes and scooters to check out the micromobility hub. So without further ado, before I introduce our special guest, I do want to congratulate Columbus and Columbus residents who just recently on November 5th voted to approve funding for this transformative historic transit plan called Link US that we're going to talk about today. Just the vote itself was a testament to everyone's dedication in the city and their love for Columbus, and also just the ability, which something that In Situ believes in, is that citizens, ordinary people, can understand complex plans and be productive contributors to urban planning processes. And this vote, I think, was a testament to that. It's very exciting because it's going to make a lot of the stuff that we visualize in VR possibly happen in real life. And while the AR engagement wasn't part of the vote campaign, we are extremely excited with this result and any small role that we can play in providing supportive information. So I would like to introduce our special guest and set the scene a little bit. Imagine that we're in Columbus, Ohio, which is actually the fastest growing city in America right now. If that's surprising to you, let's dig in and figure out why. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mindy Justice from Murphy Epson. And Mindy has 18 years of experience in marketing, public relations, and community engagement, spanning multiple disciplines, including travel and tourism, transportation, and civil infrastructure. At Murphy Epson, she leads projects with a community-first approach to both popular and controversial topics. Her role is to build community consensus for complex projects, mobilize grassroots support for major infrastructure improvements, and facilitate informed decision-making, and implement research and visioning efforts. So, Mindy, great to meet you. Whoops. You there, Mindy?
Yes, I am.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, hello.
It's so good to see you.
Yes,
I
it's
have a
great to be
question
here.
for you,
Thank you.
Mindy. What what does Columbus mean to you? How long have you lived? Were you born in Columbus?
Yeah. I'm a kind of a legacy Columbus resident, as some have been saying lately. And we kind of we've been using the term legacy Columbus lately because I'm kind of not in the majority anymore. The predominance of folks who are here are either really new, or we also have we have a host of folks that have been here for 10, 15 years and are really starting to identify as not just living here, but fully active and engaged in what's happening in their neighborhoods and at City Hall. So yes, I'm from Columbus. There are two things that I am. It is a civics nerd and a Columbus until I die kid. So happy to join you guys in talking more about our what we're doing here.
I keep hearing about younger friends of mine that are moving there, and we went there to do the pre-launch for this project, and it was so cool to learn about the city. And the view that you're seeing in the slide is kind of near one of the stops that we're going to be talking about later. But just amazing amount of public space in the downtown and greenery, and to be able to link that up, have people be able to access that, I could already see after 2 days how important that would be. Now, one thing I want to ask you about before we start talking about the Link US plan is what is infrastructure communication? You mentioned this as one of your specialties, and I had never heard of that before. So, what does that mean?
Well, and I might have even coined it a little bit because to be honest, I came out of college in the early 2000s wanting to run political campaigns. And I have a combo of sort of marketing, PR, and political science, academic experience. So I was really geeked out about making an impact in my community. And what happened is I landed at a civil engineering firm in marketing, public relations, and internal communications. And that's where it really happened, my aha moment. And I think a lot of us have these during our careers, but I note it just because I really fell in love with infrastructure. So shout out Burgess and Eiffel for doing that for me and for this community. But it goes to show that there is a complexity of communicating about stuff, and as a comms person by trade, I found that like a fun challenge. I also found it at the, green coming out of school, so excited to say, "Oh, I'll just tell people about this. This is great. They'll understand how important this is to their everyday life." Obviously, you learn over time what all that takes. But I've
Mm.
had several positions in sort of community marketing and PR and community relations since. But I like to say I'm an urban planner light, and so really we talk about what is the infrastructure in our city, what does it mean, especially in the growth context, and what's there every day that we all know is critically important as planners, but how can we tell the community at large?
Awesome. So let's talk about Link Us, this plan, and it is Link Us, right? Not Link US.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
So the us means, I see it here, it means together. So if we're talking about us as in we, why is that so important to this plan? How did the plan come about for one? I know as a growing city, if it is the fastest growing city in the country, that must put an awful strain on the existing transit system. So how
Yeah,
did the plan come
that's a
about?
really good way to tee that up because I like to say we're in the thick of having our moment. For context, Central Ohio is one of the fastest growing regions. Depending on the data set, we are the fastest, kind of depending on the detail there. We're on track to reach 3.15 million by 2050. That's for us at nearly a million more people over 25
Wow.
years. So we're growing. And I want to just put a note on this because I think we have some transportation nerds on the call as well with me. We're growing in all three ways a region can grow. We're growing in living longer, folks choosing to stay here. We're having interstate and cross state movement, so that economic development, attracting jobs, corporate relocation, things of that nature. And people are coming here for other migration. One of the cross state movements that is starting to bubble up is sort of climate resiliency and how we are a little less prone to some of the most severe climate impacts. Nothing is perfect, but more resilient. And then international migration. We are a very open and welcoming community. So we're getting it from all of the ways. I go in all of that just to
Wow.
say that there's been a lot of change. And so Link Us is really the name of an initiative that's this holistic response to population growth, where transportation and infrastructure serve as that backbone or spine. I
Amazing.
can tell you what Link Us involves. Is that a good thing to do
Yeah, I
right
mean, let's piece it together in terms of the people and the stakeholders involved in this.
now?
And what we're looking at here is one of the renderings, and we'll talk maybe a little more later about the difference between our rendering and like an interactive experience, the way we did with AR. But let's talk about the people in terms of the organizations involved in the plan. Is it a plan that is mainly from the Central Ohio Transit Authority, or is it more complex than that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, right, that's the final owner. Link Us is a partnership. The reason it has its own name and its own brand is because ultimately it's a partnership between four agencies, a transit agency, the Central Ohio Authority, um, but it's a transit agency, a city, the city of Columbus as a key partner, not the only jurisdiction touched, but is a major, major player. So, City of Columbus, a transit agency, the regional planning body, and the county. Geographically, based on how we sit, which I know depending on your transportation or your geography, some we take up a lot of the county. The city of Columbus takes up a lot of our county rather than having there's other jurisdictions, but they aren't quite as hefty. So for us, those four entities together come together for BRT and for transit in general terms. If I can just say that the total product of Link Us is rapid transit, existing transit service hours getting extended, so the existing core product getting bigger, better, plus, it's also that connective tissue, sidewalks, bikeways, and trails to make transit connections. It's also supporting ETOD, which is equitable transit oriented design and development. And we've received grant funds to look at how to generate policies specifically around our rapid transit stations to meet equity and development goals. So it is the Link Us is the
Amazing.
total package.
So suffice to say, if we're going to be talking about BRT a lot today, that is just a very small part of this plan, right? And
I would
even
say it's the spine and backbone. I don't want to
it's
say
the
it's too
it's
small
a
because it
the
is
spine.
definitely the
Okay.
core tenant, but it's not the only part.
Interesting. Okay. And yeah, we'll talk about that later because we did not end up just visualizing the bus stops themselves, but also development and other things. And so I think that's an interesting discussion. Now, this West Broad Street corridor is just one of multiple corridors that were planned with the plan. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that and sort of the timeline. And this is a map here from the Link Us materials that shows all of the stops along this one BRT proposed BRT corridor from Central Columbus on the right out west to West Columbus. Can you sort of paint a picture of this
Sure.
part of the plan?
Sure. So it is the first of the intended five plus rapid transit corridors. Three have been identified, and all three of those have been identified as bus rapid transit. Others to come could involve rail, could include other things. But these first three, West Broad, which is our west connection from the outskirts to the inner parts of our city, and then East Main, which is a similar but on the east side, and then in our northwest corridor, which is also heading up north and west. We will have others in development, but this is the first of them. It's the closest to sort of design completion. So part of the conversation around communication engagement for this is going to be really coming to life. And how do we bridge the understanding gap and really clarify what it will mean to you as anybody who's traversing this area um, in our region?
Now, let's talk a little bit about the timeline for this. And so
So we're
I have a quote here about the goal of the project, and maybe you have other thoughts about what the goals are, but how do the path to get there look something like this? What is there anything notable here that you would
correct.
like to
So we're
highlight?
we're tracking right now toward um next year, late next year, perhaps, getting some preliminary construction started. We want to start service, in 28. Construction schedules are construction schedules, but we're really getting to that point of putting shovel into ground. And so it's the time now where we're working through engineering design, working through the Federal Transit Administration. We process, right? Federal process to pull down some of those um, um, infrastructure dollars and really work toward that. So we are part of the CIG programming for those who are DOT nerds. And so part of some federal processes. And then we now have, with that levy, the local funding match to move this forward and other projects forward.
Amazing. So I'll have to like record scratch here for a moment. So we've been talking about, I know it's transit nerds here, so it's not dry to us, but to the ordinary person, some of these slides might be a little dry, a little hard to sink our teeth into. And I know that the engagement campaign that you all set up was the opposite of that. And so I want us to play a short video about how the information that we're just talking about was humanized so expertly by Murphy Epson and Coda to tell the story of this project. And maybe before we get into that, I was wondering, Mindy, like, what does the plan actually mean to you as a Columbus resident? When you see the map of West Broad, like, how do you encounter West Broad today as a resident, and how is the plan going to change your life, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you recall, but I actually live near the corridor, not directly on it, but very
Mm,
near it. And so as the first one, look, I know change is hard. And I'm excited by the evolutions and changes we've had in our community, but I understand that that doesn't mean it's everybody's excitement. And it is my job as a communicator to then help to instill and help to drive that excitement and interest as much as possible. So right now, I am car free by choice. I end up doing a lot of scooting. I do a lot of walking and then traditional fixed route bus service. And so this would be a much improved version of that as I leave my house in downtown Columbus and head out toward other real destinations here on the west side of town.
amazing. So we're gonna watch a video. Just it's not the whole thing, but just about 2 minutes of this. This was a news story that came out from a Fox affiliate, and it tells the story not only of Link Us, but about the augmented reality implementation that we ended up with. So I hope this gives some more context, and then we can dig into the details afterwards. So let me know if you can hear the audio for this video.
Well, Coda has pretty big plans to bring a world-class transit system right here to Central Ohio. And what's really neat is that they're using now technology to show you what that vision is. So we're gonna go on a little bit of a road trip with Zach and Robbie today. It's good to see you guys.
You too, Cameron.
So Robbie, what's the plan? What are we about to do?
So we're going to get a view at modernized transit for Central Ohio via augmented reality on a Coda vehicle today.
All right, we ready to go?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Do it.
So Zach, what type of
So I'm gonna,
research went
oops,
into
I'm gonna skip ahead. Sorry, I don't know how to bring the audio up higher. I hope like I can maybe turn the audio up. By the way, we've got Robbie who's in the video in our audience here. So hello, I don't want to put you on spot. Don't have to speak, but just saying hey. And so we're gonna zoom out. So they're visiting one of the stops now on this sort of bus tour into the future, and we're gonna see how in situ AR
we
was
really want to look
integrated
at
to
how
this
people-
tour.
Right. So, Robbie, clearly this used to be the old Westland Mall. How are we using AR to see what the vision is?
So with the In Situ app
Okay.
that we ask folks to download, you can go ahead and touch on the project and then give it a few seconds and it'll load what potential development could look like along this corridor.
Oh, look at this.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn it sideways. What are we looking at right here?
I love this
So
host,
you
by the
can
way.
see that there is multi-level buildings, beautiful sidewalks, connectivity with a micro-mobility hub so you can rent bikes and scooters.
Oh my God.
And a great development, so whether it's boutique, art galleries, ice cream shops, a very vital space where people in the community, so it'll make everyone in this community a lot more accessible to access businesses, healthcare, jobs, entertainment. This is one of our largest used corridors in Central Ohio.
So cool. Well, I think we have one more stop.
Yes,
Back on
we
the
do.
bus? Let's go.
All right, so won't spoil the whole thing. Give the link if you want. So that was a news story that was sort of turning this bus tour program into a news story. The bus tour was one of the main points of the community engagement campaign that was built around spreading the word about the Link Us plan. So, Mindy, can you explain sort of how you arrived at this style of storytelling where you're using bus tours, you're using these pop-up events and actually going out on the street to tell the story about the plan?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to say something that probably surprises no one, that where we are in the information age is harder than it's absolutely ever been to get people's attention and get messages to stick, let alone if you're asking for a call to action of any kind, like give us your feedback on station locations or priorities and preferences on station amenities, just understanding. And so to be honest, I've been pitched this type of communication several times with a couple of folks, and I don't just say this because we're on the call. In fact, this is more the reason we are on the call, is that in large part, this was the first time I saw the technology intersecting with staff that have a real understanding of planning and architecture. And so just because I liked it doesn't mean it was a go either. In late 23, Columbus City Council, the city administration, Central Ohio Transit Authority, all of them said, look, we have a lot to communicate with a lot of these things going on. We need to think differently. We need to think really big. Their leadership is how it got to this time, this space, this place. And so that excellent leadership and desire really met the moment, which then got us to think, well, what do we want to do? We know we want to move beyond a PowerPoint or a rendering because it's so complicated. And we want people to feel like they want it,
Yeah,
downright
Mindy,
excited.
I was saying the other day when we chatting about how renderings like the one back in the earlier slide, they're so glossy and shiny, they almost just turn your brain off. And I wonder sometimes if that's,
Yeah.
to get us to just say, uh-huh, okay, and not really think about stuff that very much. But this is a plan where, because it was being voted on among other things, we actually want people to turn their brains on and think more and really understand what's being proposed. And so I guess this method of storytelling is one way to do that. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's very true because we know that ultimately we ended up going with a fully guided version. We definitely liked the fact that the idea here was that the augmented reality sits really where it's meant to be, and you can see the building you interact with or the roadway you sit at a light perhaps every day to day. And that is really what at the end of the day got us to transition to this. A couple of other ideas were like creating like a like closing down a street, right, and doing several blocks and doing like a
Oh yeah.
mock-up and stuff. But some other stuff just seemed actually a little riskier and a
Mhm.
little less weather capable than something like this. And that's part ultimately where if we're gonna show it for real, this is the best way to do it.
So, like, one of the things maybe that sets it apart from a rendering or a PowerPoint is that it's an experience. It's sort of multi-sensory, and I think the other thing is staring us in the face on this slide is that it's real people face-to-face interaction. You're actually gathering as a group and having an experience together where you're maybe leaving with a different understanding than you came. Is that right?
Correct. Ultimately, our deployment of AR was part of a fully guided tour led by CODA staff. We also have, you can do it on your own. We'll talk about that in a moment, or some of those supporting materials. But for others considering something like this, I just wanted to make note that for us, you don't have to deploy in this way. What we did there was we had really two folks. We had one with a keen, really at the helm of the project, was elevated enough in her position with the organization to keep that top level energy, interest, and buy-in, as challenges invariably occur. That's life. And then we had someone dedicated to thorough and thoughtful deployment. That's Robbie Banks, who you just saw, and really, when you talk about that for us, I mean, that's everything from getting stakeholder names, scheduling them, reminding them to show up, AV needs on the bus. We're talking about even a few extra iPhones, in case somebody
Yep.
doesn't have a device.
You mentioned
Really
something.
looking at it as a program of stakeholder engagement.
I think that's a really important point because even when we do AR projects, it's not just the AR that's the biggest challenge. A lot of times it is things like, does your decal have the right thing to make it stick to the sidewalk outdoors? Have you ordered the right
Yes,
type
we
of,
had that, didn't
you
we?
know, well, we had that. And then, everything around the AR is so important. And so, and the AR was not the center, but a supporting actor in this storytelling. And so to be able to fit in seamlessly, even though we were very aligned in our philosophies, I think, of storytelling and meeting people where they are, still required a lot of sort of decisions and creativity. And so we, In situ has done our own research on what types of signage and decals work well for engagement, but we also had to integrate with stuff like the website that Coda was using to figure out how to embed a digital map for the self-guided tour. And I guess maybe the self-guided and the guided tour aren't entirely separate in the strategy, because anyone who goes to one of the events might want to show someone afterwards, which is one of the things that the AI makes possible, so that event can have a extended impact, I guess. Now, I would like to ask you a little more about the material you created and how you adapted the AR into it. So the pamphlet design, anything about this type of storytelling and how it was used that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so we saw printed and physical collateral as an important sort of corollary, right? Because we know print is still having it's kind of made a comeback, as more folks have been more on digital surfaces. So just having both to pull it all together, saying a lot of the same things, frankly, that we're saying in the tour, but just repeating it lets it have different life, different layers. So if somebody's out doing neighborhood events, they can just pass that out, right? And whether or not they do the full experience or they just do one of the pieces, they're also gaining this information on the number of stations. So you can at any time go out on your own, or even if you never go, you're gaining this information. And so I think it's helpful to notice to note that, like, we give you the choice of how you want to engage, right? We're physically where you are. And once we're here, you get to choose. We're not going to ask more of your time and energy than you want to give us. But if you want to give it to us, you can sign up or you can do the whole tour yourself.
I love this design so much, and what you just said about meeting people where they are in terms of their amount of time they have to do something. And so it's non-linear experience potentially. You can take it at a little bit of bite at a time. I also love in this pamphlet design how you've put the landmarks in the stops. And so even reading a map can be intimidating, but if you say take in the view from the Third Way Cafe, like I know where that is, I can go there. If that's near me, I recognize I'm being called out. So I love the design here and how you integrated it into that. And we can talk a little bit also about the individual stops. And this is the part of the webinar where you can actually check them out in the remote view. So one of the ways you can use the AR is actually on your tabletop or on your floor in your room, and to see some of the 3D models that we created. And if you want to do that, you can scan the QR codes on these slides to open the remote view, interactive view of the AR. And we have our full team in chat. So if you have any issues with that, please ask some questions in the chat. But maybe we could talk a little bit about the Westland Mall stop first. My first experience with Westland Mall stop was seeing something like this, except it was on a very cold morning. And I think we had about an hour to get it ready before we had a meeting with y'all. And so the pressure was on, shall we say. We were out here aligning 3D content here. This is at the time where I had to call the team at In Situ and say, to Christian here, can you move the model 3 degrees to the right? And so I want to give a shout out because working with Mindy and the team on this project actually inspired some features that we had worked our way into In Situ AR. One of them is the edit mode, where you can actually go out with your phone and edit the buildings, edit the AR content on site yourself and save it. So it means you can make the adjustments you need without having to go back and forth to their office or call a colleague. We ended up using that feature later in this project to use some local volunteers from the Link Us project to go out and make some updates and edits on the sites themselves, which was amazing. And so to take a spot like this that's pretty hostile for a pedestrian and transform it into an experience more like this was, I think, a great part of this stop. But do you have any other recollections of the Westlake Mall stop? I think it was the first stop on the tour?
It is the first stop on the tour. It's probably the most challenging and difficult one to fully explain too. So that's just kind of the way the geography lent itself. So one of the things I think that's important to note is, and you'll see this in the far right. So we did tours with stakeholders because we have four partner agencies and they all have degrees of understanding within those organizations and they all have boards. The very first thing to do was to get all four organizations, as many staff, as many board members as possible on the tour, right? So somewhat of an internal communication. It was a stakeholder communication, right? It's CODA talking to the county. So that's a stakeholder communication, but really getting deep in the weeds on making sure there's a unified understanding
So
because
this was
people
when we
in
were
the community
still
will then
trying
ask
to
those
decide, right?
questions.
We were still
Yeah,
trying to decide
and
what
they're the people
it
that
looked
people are going to
like,
go
right?
to.
So
Yeah.
ostensibly, the project was still under construction, and yet I think what I saw when we brought the stakeholders out was that it was actually being used as a way for us to gain understanding between each other about the project itself. And I overheard some folks who learned something new about their levels of information by exploring the AR, even in its unfinished state.
Yeah, so we had while we were working through development and build out, we ourselves were trying to decide what we were trying to convey. And I think anybody who's done a strategic communications plan or strategy knows that creation of the plan is actually decision making. It's not separate, it's fully embedded. And so when we first said, oh, we want to show a building, we realized we need to hone in, refine, and decide what our story is in a much clearer, crisper, better way. And so I have to give, shout out to In Situ for really being patient with us. This one took a lot more energy than we would have
We
initially
did a lot of
expected.
revisions, yeah, and Christian, our modelers here, it was amazing in that you can see that the difficulty here. So to be clear, there was no specific plan for the Westland Mall for what's going to come up there in the future. We're talking about potential development things that's unlocked by the transit plan, and so to be able to do something that is sort of both inoffensive but also exciting, but also can emphasize the types of things that are possible without seeming too finished was the challenge here. And you can see sort of decisions that made their way into very small details in the artwork that are meant to convey that, I think.
Yeah, it's as simple as I'd point out things like showing trees and landscaping that are robust and is intended for our, canopy tree plants and stuff like that, but also that aren't so big that they're showing it in 30 years and so you don't feel like it's a realistic thing you'll ever see in your lifetime. So even just tree growth, right? And how do we communicate that? That ends up making some technical decisions that actually really helps in our broader storytelling in and outside of the AR.
After doing these revisions, I mean, it transformed my experience within less than a week where I was walking at the same landscape and imagining just all of the stuff that was invisible. So even without the AR active, just puts it in sort of your imagination. And I'll never think about that intersection the same way again, I guess. So the next stop was actually showing the first one where we showed the bus stop, and this is at Westgate Avenue, and this is the one that's by that coffee shop that we mentioned earlier. So, can you tell more about that coffee shop and the significance for you, and also, I guess, how the local businesses and the local neighborhood residents played into your communication strategy?
Yeah, sure. So when we selected this location amongst the many different stations, because it's kind of where we start our sort of dedicated guideway, we have some mixed traffic. BRT operating on the side of the road and other places. This is where we get to a big change for the Central Ohio community, which is dedicated infrastructure that only sees BRT, that only has transit and is not for vehicle use. So wanting to communicate effectively, we chose that spot. It also is really the sort of entree into the Hilltop neighborhood, which is, has seen, it's been through a lot over the many, many years. And so newer businesses are heading in there. It's getting a lot of growth. This is an additional investment that'll really help to round out its array of assets. The Third Way Cafe took a previous like drive through and actually really intelligently and creatively made it a place to go in and sit for coffee. So again, that was one component. Then as we were baking it, because they are generally active in their community, we found they were walking out while we were trying to figure out how to design it. And then next thing you know, we're best friends, right? And they're bringing everybody out, and we had one time when they actually let us call in a coffee order ahead of time, and
Wow.
it was just a charming connection that they got used to seeing us every Tuesday. They know when we would stop by.
I mean, it shows the benefit of having meetings out on the site just in general and like the unexpected collisions. But also, I think one thing we say is the reason we use smartphone augmented reality or iPad augmented reality and not glasses, not visors, is because you can share that experience. Like people, you can see in the photo, people can look over each other's shoulder and it becomes a group experience, not this individualized. And so much of the, latest technology is all about private, very isolated individual experiences that don't take us outdoors. But to be able to use it to bring people together is really the meaningful aspect of the mobile AR. And I guess the story Mindy was just referring to is I was there actually. The people came out of the coffee shop, looked over his shoulder, said, "Oh, what you doing? Oh, they're planning something like that." And it was like less than 30 seconds, not only to understand what was being proposed, but also get excited about it because, hey, that could mean, more patrons for the coffee shop, and very convenient commute, certainly. So let's move to the last stop. So once again, you can scan these QR codes to see the models on your desk. It'll, open your phone camera, ask for some permissions, and you'll, when you see the dots if you point it at your table or your floor and tap your finger, that will load the 3D model there, and you can use your fingers to swipe it around or pinch and zoom it up to scale. Let us know if you have any issues with that. And the Bell Street stop was the last stop. It was the closest stop to downtown. And so, I think the tour was like going from the future sort of back to the present. And this is the stop that felt the most like the present to me. And yet it was very interesting to see how it was sort of connected to the existing infrastructure and the museums in the area and so forth. So, but I wanted to ask you to tell us a story about this photo on the right, because this is something that happened where it was actually the mayor of Columbus was able to use the augmented reality as a sort of filter to take this photo that was posted on Instagram where it's like a photo op with the future. And you can see the proposed bus stop behind. And we had people ask us so many times, is that real? Like you couldn't even tell it was AR. And so how did that come about? And do you have any other recollections from this stop?
Yeah. We did want to make sure that all of our city officials were brought in, and regardless of their sort of degree of understanding and awareness, because they may not be the transportation person. In this case, of course, our mayor's head of the administration, very active in this programming. And so when he went to experience the final product, he said, you know what we're talking about here is about how we're going to develop, how we're going to put in bike lanes, how we care about getting people to the things that they want to go to, like attractions and downtown. And so then their team, as part of some other communications they were doing about not just Link Us as a program, but other like bikeway plans and how these things fit together, said, this is how we'll show them. This is if I was able to see this and understand this, it'll take a little choreography, but we'll get a good picture of how our future is being worked forward, and how we're doing that right now. And we're not, and it feels like it takes a while, but we're doing it right now. And he did a great job of just taking a product that we were using to communicate about a future infrastructure investment and just bringing it to life in a wholer sense. And, obviously he was already, really leading the charge on this, but also just to remind folks and cement that, look, hey, I'm here for this. This is the kind of, infrastructure investment that's important for us.
That's so cool. And like, this was a total surprise to us, by the way. We did not plan this. In situ team did not anticipate even this use case for AR. It was new to us. It's something that since then we talk about a lot. So amazing innovation that just came from experimenting. And I think that the important thing here is not only that you can see the real life city behind and the context of which street it is, because even I read some comments on some other posts about this plan from people who thought it was proposed for a different street and thought it was too big. And so even just the basics of understanding which street something was proposed for, and then not only that, but seeing someone that you trust and recognize in the photo, because so often I know we've seen these architectural renderings where it's someone who's just a stock photograph, and you're like, that person doesn't look like someone from my neighborhood or someone from my city. It was really cool to see this. I guess the last section I want to talk to you about, Mindy, is how did you measure the impact or the effectiveness of this engagement plan, and what are some of the metrics that you tracked, but also some of the sort of qualitative impacts that your communication had?
Yeah, sure. I'll let you kind of talk through some of those the numbers and such, but sort of on reporting, because this program Link Us is a really big four partner agency plus the Columbus partnership, really co-owning and running it. We did a lot of reporting in, so it's a really important, I think, and helpful note that we basically pulled our metrics into a total report on a regular recurring basis. We had, website traffic, social media hits, paid media, and then we had augmented reality. And it was just one wonderful metric to round out engagement and talk to those partners about how we are moving the needle holistically. And it helped keep them apprised of and reminded them to give us names of stakeholders to continue to invite along. So it was just a really good reporting play. I'll let you talk about the numbers because I think our numbers are great.
Yeah, it was so exciting to track these, and it's important to mention, and we've noted in our metrics, like to the key events that happened along the way, because it wasn't just, it was a lot of the organic engagement that linked these key events, the tours that were happening. But the key thing that we learned from this project, and we saw over 2,000 AR views and averaging over 80 AR views per week, which really showed that it, unlike the status quo community engagement where you have one event in a gymnasium, the same 10 people show up and then it's over, in between these events, there is just continuous growing engagement with the content of those events, where somebody from that event can bring someone back, share the exact same experience with them, and that story can grow over time and then also spill out into the social media and the news media as well to really amplify that engagement. So the numbers are amazing. They're just the tip of the iceberg as well. And then I think the real impact, you can measure in these conversations and these transformational experiences, and how many of them that we're able to unlock when we have something that's persistent and available and immersive the way that mobile AR is. Someone might have the link to the news story that from Fox. Dig for that. We'll get that to you by the end of the presentation. I think some of the key insights from that we had just from the AR portion, right, of the engagement strategy was that we had incredible continuous engagement. The tours and events are key to success, and so if you're planning a AR implementation for public engagement, this is the truth of anything in cities, is that people are attracted by other people. So integrating with existing things and reasons why we're out on the street is really key. If you do pop-ups or if you do bus tours or go to the coffee shop, because we all love coffee, right? So this is the key to that. And then so social media posts with trusted and local influencers capture that more because it's always available. The shouting that out on the website is great. One way we did that with the embedded web map. I think to conclude, and we want to get to some question and answer in our last 10 minutes here. But do you have anything else to share about the plan and any tips for where people can learn more about that?
Yeah, so the broader initiative, linkuscolumbus.com to kind of get the idea of the totality of improvements that we're anticipating. And I want to say that again, we have our architects, we have our engineers on the team, and I really want to tip of the hat to those firms. AECOM was our engineering firm who really went ahead and took their models and made sure that they got them over to Institute to take their renderings, the things that they had shopped and really spent a lot of time and energy on and getting those into this to make it in a real way.
Awesome. So linkuscolumbus.com. If you want to learn more, check out the web map and see these augmented reality projects on your own time, either remotely or if you're in Columbus or visiting Columbus, I think you can still check them out. And then on the in situ side, we'd love if you would give it a try. It's never been easier to try in situ for yourself. In fact, if you start now, you can probably do it before the end of this webinar. We have a new feature called the sample model library. So if you don't have a 3D model ready, you can try it out with one of these. And so when you create an account at insitu.us/pro for free, in the free tier, you'll be able to create one of these projects and pick one of these models and put it out on a street near you. And go out and see it. And we've got documentation and an entire community of users to help you on that journey. So please reach out, and I'm happy to hop on a call with you to walk you through any ideas that you might have, anything that sparks for you. We also have a list of tools to quickly create 3D models. I think one of the things people say is, I would want to try the AR, but I don't have a 3D model, or the plan isn't far enough along where we have 3D models yet. So we've compiled a list of tools that can create them pretty easily. And if you want to check out this first version of our guide, there's a QR code here where you can download that. But I'd love to get to some questions from the audience. If anybody wants to ask either via text chat or by unmuting, you're welcome. I will remind everyone this meeting's being recorded, and we're going to be putting it up on YouTube. So just to let you know, but I'd love to, if anyone has any questions for Mindy, to take those. I want to start you off with one that I didn't get to ask about the future, Mindy. So looking ahead, what's next for the plan? How do you consider incorporating the AR elements into some future phases of the work? And what are the benefits that you see in using these type of technologies, but also that philosophy that you mentioned of the immersive storytelling for the future phases?
Yeah, so we had what felt like a really successful first go, right? We did a tour. We were happy with the metrics. We're happy with the understanding that it cemented. And so immediately it leads folks at whether it's the transit agency or the city or these partner organizations to go, oh, are we going to do this again? Are we going to do it again? So right now we're in the thick of fully evaluating that. So I can't say, oh, yes, it's going to happen and exactly on this date. But what we said is we see how helpful and informative this is. Now, what does that mean for the future? Do we do it instead of a fully guided, maybe a completely self-guided? Maybe it's all walking tours. So perhaps instead of getting on the bus and keeping people captive for an hour and a half, we just have smaller, focused, a couple of stops here, depending on the area of the community the stakeholder group generally lives in or would experience. So there are ways to do this and because we've already started to work with the team, we know now what we can do to gain the most efficiencies and the best engagement on our side. So we are evaluating it for another corridor, the East Main corridor, and so that could come to pass. We'll have to see.
Amazing. And what would you say to other cities? I know there's probably people here who are involved in the transit planning for some other cities, either here in the US or abroad. What advice would you give to other cities or communities looking to undertake similar projects to Link Us? And also, what are the lessons you learned from this project, this type of engagement project, that you would give to another city who might want to try it?
Well, I would say that I think a number of folks in the transportation planning space, we talk a lot about how to engage, how to engage, how to engage. And so this is a consistent thing. One of the biggest problems with engagement in the information age, like I said, is getting anybody's attention. And I would strongly advise considering taking and choosing to do something kind of big and bold like this. I know that it's a little bit feels a little risky, but it's not. We need to do something in order to let people know what's coming. And I think I would encourage folks to dig in and learn more. I would also encourage folks to humanize the experience 1,000%, stand in it, take the bus on a bus route that you plan to improve, take a bike on a bike route. And what questions do you have? And I think that's what this does. To your point about street level versus high level, what happens is you stand there and you go, I would like this, I would dislike this. You might have some negative opinions and you might have positive, and that is very okay. But you actually have we've cut through some of the misunderstanding, and you actually are giving those really wonderful bits of feedback that are truly like, wow, you know what? Oh wait, that's not how I was thinking. Never mind. That's not a thing. I'm gonna love this. It really
Yeah.
point of clarity is truly important when you're making these big investments. We spend millions of dollars on engineering and on these capital dollars themselves, and spending a little extra money on engagement and communication up on the upfront really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, really, and the blind spots can be so costly, right? And there's
You
nothing
don't know
like
what you
going
don't
to
know.
yeah, and you go to see it for yourself is the only way to do that, right? So, I think AR is a great excuse. It's more than an excuse, but a great reason to get outside, go see for yourself, and maybe we'll leave everyone with that note and challenge to go see something for yourself today in your city. If it's snowing, then that might be more of a challenge. But I certainly need to get outside today. So thanks so much, Mindy. This was amazing. I loved this project, and I'm very excited to maybe continue it in the future with you all. And thanks to everyone, and especially the other project team members that are with us today for everything all your collaboration. And I think we've learned a lot from this, certainly as a startup, but also I think our users can learn so much from this project. It is really the premier case study for I think augmented reality in general and how to use it for public engagement. So thanks everybody. We will have the video from this up again on our YouTube page, so check that out soon, and we'll mail it to everyone who RSVP'd. So thanks again, Mindy. Any other last words?
No, just thank you very much for the privilege. Columbus is the best city in the US. I'm glad we got to show it off.
Right on. All right, Shay, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.